Thank you. Don't ever give that man a microphone again. All right, welcome. I'm G. Mark Hardy. Thanks for coming out to CarolinaCon. Privileged to be here. Glad I was able to make it down. All right, I want to talk to you about tales from the crypto. All right, who does cryptography for a living? Like none of us, right? Who uses cryptography in our, every day, right? And we like to break it too. Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight in terms of crypto. I'm going to roll the clock back a little bit. Because you can either hear about stories that you can look up in the library, or I'm going to show you ways you can win crypto contests, or even better, get your head around crypto in general. Does that sound like a good way to spend the next hour or so? All right, let's go. All right, so buy me beer, and I'll tell you stories about military crypto before and after World War I, World War II. By the time everything got computerized, it kind of stopped being fun anymore because then it was mostly brute force and who had the biggest computers. But before that, it used to be who had the biggest brains. And so now what you're going to find out is that I'm going to show you a little bit of the background of how crypto works and give you the basic fundamental moves so that you can go ahead and work just about any crypto system today. Yep. So there's four basic types of crypto systems. I'm only going to talk about two of them here. There's transposition ciphers, which means you move things around. And substitution ciphers, which means you replace one thing with another. Pretty straightforward. Product exponentiation ciphers are things you need an advanced math degree for. A little bit beyond a 1 hour talk. We're not going to get into that. But if you want, it's out there. So, transposition, the basic moves. What does it look like? All right, let's say we got a message. Attack at dawn. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll populate our little grid with the message. And so it's going to have little indices to say, okay, what's our key? What's a good key to use? Pick something. How about 1, 2, 3, 4? Just grab down the first column, down the second, down the third, down the fourth, and here you go. You get a message, ACD, TKA, TAW, ATN. Straightforward, right? Remember the Not the Fed shirts that Bill Breen did about 10 years ago at DEF CON? That's what it, NOT, THE, FDD. People walking around like, what does it spell? It's like, look at it the other way. Well, not everybody's bright out there. If you change the key, guess what? You get a little bit different set. TKA, ATN, TAW, ACD. But what do you notice about the ciphertext and the plain text? They're the same letters, all right? You're going to find that the frequency of the most common letters that are in your plain text are going to be the same frequency that are in your ciphertext. And the most common letter in the English language is E, T, A, O, N, I, R. Say, okay, like to buy a vowel? Like you're a moron if you want to buy a vowel, all right? You just go ahead and just use those consonants. And so you watch these TV game shows, that's the order you're supposed to use them, because every language has a different sequence of letters. And if you got to the point where you had the same number of every single letter, that's like white noise, right? There's no way you can look at it and see any differentiation. Now, a substitution cipher, this has been around for a long, long time. Ever heard of a guy by the name of Julius Caesar? Yeah. So what Caesar ciphers were is something they used over 2,000 years ago, because back then, first of all, about 99% of the people were illiterate anyway. So that helped. And then if you went ahead, just scrambled it just a little bit, the other 1% were like totally duped as well. So you really didn't need a really solid cipher. So what he did, or his cryptographers did, is they said, we'll take all the letters, we're going to shift them 3 places, click, click, click. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take the first 3, stick them at the end, and now A becomes D, B becomes E, C becomes F, D becomes G, etc. Okay? So you just think about your letters as if they were on a big wheel, and you just click, 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 like the Captain Crunch decoder ring. No, not like the Captain Crunch whistle. That's a different talk. But the Captain Crunch decoder ring is very similar to Caesar cipher. And Caesar used a cipher period of 3. Now, how many different periods could you use and still get a good cipher out of this? 25, right? You wouldn't do 26 because what happens? Lands right on top of itself. Okay, so what you look for then are little weaknesses in the crypto system. Again, you're going to find out that you're going to get a different number of common letters. So attack at dawn in a Caesar cipher would be, wait. Gwyndefen with Gitzik. All right, and that would be enough to confuse pretty much everybody. I didn't do it. There we go. So what you find, though, is in the substitution cipher, remember we're talking about frequency in the most common letters? Are there still going to be common letters in the output? Yeah, there's going to be different ones. And so what you find out in a Caesar cipher is if you know that E, T, A, O, I, and R are the most common ones, and then you find out that you shift them over by 3 places, and there's a lot of H's, and there's a lot of W's, and there's a lot of D's, and it's probably a Caesar cipher. But wait, there's more. The French, not to be outdone in the military sense, seeing as Caesar went ahead and divided them up into 3 pieces, decided to come out with a visionnaire cipher. And what this cipher was, it said, hey, let's go ahead and have multiple Caesar ciphers. Well, what does this mean? That means you would pick a period, whether it's 2, 3, 5, pick a word, pick a key, and then you repeat it over and over again. So if you had a 5-letter key, letter 1, letter 6, 11, 16 would all use the first letter of the key. And then letter 2 and 7 and so on. So what you'll find out is that with 5 simultaneous ciphers going, every 5th letter in this case uses the same cipher. But if you don't know that, that distribution of a lot of common letters starts to get mushed together. And a good crypto system is designed to make your output look like noise. And you can't see what's going on, you can't tell what's going on. So in a visionnaire cipher, let's say we pick the key party, okay? So we've got P and A and R and T and Y, and I've highlighted those columns here. And now if we have a message that we want to go ahead, and let's say, for example, we've got their good old attack at dawn tomorrow. We'll add a little bit in there. A lot of times we'll break it up into the number of letter groupings. That's the key, because it's easy, because we're going to do the first of each of the groups with the first letter of P, party, and the first of the next group with P for party, and so on. Think about letters like you do numbers. You can add them together. So what's A plus A? B. What's AA? Where we should all be, right? Okay, so B, if B is 2, B plus B is D. And D plus D would be H, and so on. And so when you get to Z, you got to wrap around again. Okay, so you're into a group, and in mathematics, groups have certain properties that are very, very nice, and that things don't repeat and they can loop around. So here, if we go ahead and do this key, what do we get? Something that's even more scrambled. I'm not even going to try to drink that without a shot. So, Kulub, Ablix, Muzzle, whatever. What you're seeing now is you're not seeing the same letter over and over and over again. You're seeing unusual letters appear. And the more unusual the outcome of the crypto system, the less likely you are to look at it and go, aha, that's what it is. So the whole idea behind crypto is to go ahead and make it difficult for somebody without the key to figure it out. All right, let me give you one more tool in your toolbox. And I'm going kind of fast, but all these slides will be available, and you're going to see how this all comes together in a little bit. This is called the Playfair cipher, or I call it don't cheat. Because a lot of times when I give out a hint, don't cheat, it's Playfair. And what that is, so let's say, for example, we're doing Hacker Jeopardy tonight, right? So Hacker Jeopardy needs more crypto. So what you do in Playfair is the idea was we set up a 5x5 grid, and with some basic rules. Now, there's somebody else who used to use a 5x5 grid back in the 1960s and 70s. Anybody know who that was? It wasn't Bingo. You drink. It was the prisoners of war in the Hanoi Hilton. And they found out that if you had your little thing here, they created what they called the tap code. So row and column, so if you want to set an A, it was a dot, then a tap. Because these guys are tied up in solitary confinement for months at a time, but you could go ahead and tap on the pipes and send little messages back and forth, and the North Vietnamese captors never quite figured out what their code was. They knew they were up to something, but they didn't know what they were up to. And so you could pretty quickly figure out, and to go ahead and change it, they'd pull one letter out, so everything would kind of slide around a little bit, so we have to think about it. And they had their own little tap code, which is the way they communicated in the prisons. Well, here what you'll do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to repopulate the letters in the box. Why would we do something like this? Because now we're going to introduce a new way of encrypting stuff that unless you're thinking this way, it's just not going to make sense when you look at the output. So you can't repeat letters, right? So H-A-C-K-E-R, but then when you come to Jeopardy, J-E, hey, we've already used the E. So you skip that. And that's why you see, for example, here, we go ahead and we throw those letters in there, and we come up with this little block. And all these guys drop in here. And when we get to the last letter, we take whatever letters have not yet been used, and we drop them in. Now here's the problem. We got 26 letters in the alphabet, but 26 doesn't divide evenly as a square root in a nice little box. So you got to drop a letter. Which letter have we dropped here? Q. What letter is also sometimes dropped? J. Don't ask me why, because think about it. If you drop the Z, it's at the end anyway, right? It's not going anywhere. It's usually there. So dropping the Z doesn't help a whole lot. So there's some real basic rules here when it comes to Playfair. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to encrypt 2 letters at a time. It's called a digraph. This is important because this is the first cipher that I'm now doing more than 1 letter at a time. And if the 2 letters are in the same row, okay, I can go ahead and I'm going to go click, click, go 1 over. If they're in the same column, I'm going to go down. And if they're in opposite corners of a box, I'm going to grab the other opposite corners of the box. But wait, you ask, what if it wraps around to the end or down off the bottom? Think of it like it goes, wraps around. Remember, it's a group. Things round around. You don't have something past Z, it goes back to A again. So let's take a look at this. So we take, now is the time for all whatever. And we're going to encrypt that. So first we break it into 2s, N-O-W-I-S-T-H-E. And now let's go ahead and we're going to take a look at our little box. Here's our hacker Jeopardy needs more crypto. So if we take N-O, let's look over here with N-O. And we'll see what's the opposite corners of this N-O box. S-J, that's my first group. Okay, we look at W-I. Opposite corners are going to be what? X-G, see? And so S-T, are those also in opposite? Yeah, those are in the same row. So that's going to wrap around. M, fell off the end, come all the way back, we get a Y. And it's pretty easy. Remember, these cipher systems were designed to be done by hand. And even as far as forward as World War II, a lot of the cipher systems that were being done were all computed by hand. Why? Because you didn't have your iPhone out there to go ahead and download a cute little app for 99 cents and make it work. So these had to be things that people could do in their heads with rules that could be repeated. And a lot of the spies you hired were probably expendable, so they weren't PhDs in math. So you had to have something that was pretty straightforward for them to do. So that's a Playfair cipher. Well, that's all great and good, but now what do we do in the age of digital electronics? Well, hey, we need 0s and 1s. That's all we've got. So there's one thing we could look at is a one-time pad. This is pretty cool, and this really kind of got going around World War I. The idea was if I have a key that is exactly the same length as my plain text, how likely is someone to break that if I don't repeat the key? None. Doesn't work. You can't break it. It's what they call the perfect cipher. Because, well, the problem is you got to get the key out there, right? And so when I was in the Navy, what we used to do is we would have the key cards, and they would be couriered out with a guy literally with the thing handcuffed to his wrist, the stuff that you see in movies. Yeah, no kidding, we do that. And they get the little computer cards, and they count them up, and they add them up, and they'd sign for it and everything else. He got it wrong. He went to Leavenworth, and he made big rocks into little rocks, and nobody wanted to do that because it wasn't good for your career. So we get these things, we put them on the ship, and off you go, and you start transmitting back and forth, and off you go. Well, everybody heard of, like, the Walker brothers? Yeah, well, it turned out the first ship that I got assigned to was the same ship that he was on. But about 2 or 3 years later. So he'd already come and gone. And he was a communications officer. He had worked his way up. He had sold his soul to the Soviet Union and was acting as an insider spy. So he had this top secret clearance, and he had access to all this stuff. Well, if you don't know what the crypto machine looks like, you're not sure what the algorithm was. But using his cute little handy-dandy spy camera, he would go through when nobody was around, everybody's out at lunch, and take little pictures of all the schematics. And they do a little dead drop when they make a port visit, and the Soviet agents would pick them up. But what about the keys, you might ask? They change them every day, sometimes every 6 hours, because it's all this highly classified traffic. So they'd take these cards, and you didn't destroy them right away. because you had to go ahead and get 2 people to sign for them. You had to burn them. You had to crush the ashes, things like that. So what he would do, they'd wait till they got into port, and he'd tell everybody, he says, hey, look, I'll take care of this for you. Just go ahead and hit the beach, have some fun, and I'll sign off. Oh, really, sir? That's great. Thank you so much. And everybody loved him because he'd take care of that hard stuff. And so what he would do, take pictures of all the cards, and then destroy them and burn them and send the ashes flying everywhere, but the microfilm would work its way back to the Soviet Union. Now, what they're able to do then is rebuild the same equipment that we had, and then take the keys and replay the recorded message traffic and know what we were up to. An awful lot of money, an awful lot of time and people, and eventually, when you look at guys like Aldrich James who compromised some stuff, some people got killed as a result of some of this espionage. So one-time pad works great, but you gotta get the key out to the world. So, look at these operations. What's that circle with the plus sign mean? XOR. What's XOR also equivalent to in terms of the normal math functions that kids understand? Not remainder. Little kids usually don't do remainders. How about not equal to? Right? If it's not equal to it, true or false? Is 0 not equal to 0? No, it is. It's false. So with this thing here, now I can very quickly take any stream of zeros and ones, add a key stream to it, and very quickly do an XOR. It turns out XOR is very fast in hardware, and now I can go ahead and I can build ultra-high-speed crypto systems. If I can just feed the key and feed the data fast enough, get OC12, blast that stuff in there, I can encrypt it because it's just using a simple XOR. The hard part is I got to come up with a really cool key that's not going to repeat. So, if you want to run crypto contests, you got to think like the guy or the girl who develops them. Anybody go to the ninja parties out in Vegas? Yeah. You remember that? They tell me they had a good time. Yeah. And that's a neat crypto. And in fact, on this little ninja badge, if you look at the badge closely, right there up into the, on the badge itself, it's got a little cipher on it. And it's got 2-letter groupings and things like that. So what type of cipher do you think that might be? Playfair, and it was a Playfair cipher. Everybody remember what the key was for that? Alan Turing. Anyway, there it is up there on the card. So you can create your own crypto, but be careful. It's like packing your own parachute. If you're not good at that, it could end up really, really bad. I've had people, in fact, my first job, when I started my own company, my first client was a corporation who said, we've developed our own crypto systems and we want you to go ahead and prove that they're secure. So like, here you go, kid. So I looked at it and broke the crypto. It was pretty cool. So I came in there for like their midterm review and they said, okay, we got Mr. Big and Mr. Big here, and here's this little 20-some-odd-year-old kid here. Let's see what you got there, son. Well, I took a look at this and this and here, and then here's you cracked it all open. Here's your crypto. And the guy's like, well, Mr. Big, yeah, we're just validating whether this young man here is actually good at this stuff. And in fact, it turns out that he is. So we're going to give him the real crypto, and we're going to let him solve that. And oh, by the way, kid, you don't get any more time on the contract. Well, being young and arrogant and not really understanding a whole lot about business, hey, it was my first client. I'm only 29. I went ahead and I broke the second key. And just to rub it in, I wrote the software to break the key in BASIC. And I submitted that. And I didn't get any more work from that client ever again. But you'll learn very quickly that sometimes the ways of crypto, don't roll your own. In fact, they went ahead and they put their stuff out commercially using some other stuff. So let's roll back a couple years. ShmooCon. People into ShmooCon up in DC, great can. It was right after Mardi Gras. I took my wife down to Mardi Gras for very first time, and she's a pretty good looking lady, and she attracted lots of beads and stuffed animals and lots of other things. But fortunately, she wasn't doing the shirt lift. Over 50 pounds of beads, all right? Did you ever try to balance that? You don't want to pay for this stuff at the airline, so you can't get on the bathroom scale in the hotel. It's like, okay, 49.5. That's exactly what it weighed in there at the airport, and they're like, we can't charge you extra. I didn't want to kick them around, so do what anybody would do when you had a box of keys. You create a crypto contest, right? So I came up with some different plain text, and I said, I'm going to go ahead and hide these things in little clues, hand them out to people. If anybody was there at ShmooCon, they came out in your bag. Well, what's unusual about this text? Take a look at it for a moment. No punctuation, but that's okay because there's only letters usually in a crypto system. So good observation, but that's not what we're looking for. What did you say? No E's. Whoa, that's called a lipogram. There's a whole book called Gadsby that the guy wrote by tying down letter E on his typewriter back when people had typewriters. And so there are no E's here. The guy from Google, when he, after 2 days beating his head, he says, "You're evil," when he finally figured out, because he is trying the most common letter is E. And of course, there isn't a single one there. I wrote it that way. So there's a ciphertext that gets all encrypted, and they can't figure it out. So here's what's something, we handed these things out, and they have little badges and things like that. And what you find out then is if you look at the right-hand side, the last column here, GMARK, you find a lot of my cipher contests I autograph. I stick a little something in there. What is it? Smart Art Facts, the guy in Doug Adams stuff, always autographed his stuff, with his name in the fjords. Well, mine's usually in most crypto contests. And so if you change GMARK to numbers, what numbers are those? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, M, 7, 13, 1, 18, 11. So sometimes those numbers, you're going to see them a little bit later in the presentation. So if you figure that out the first round, you got it. It gave you a clue, and you cracked that, and then round 2, you went to my talk called A Hacker Looks Past 50, because a year earlier I talked about A Hacker Looks at 50. It's up on YouTube if you want it. And they hand out these really cool punch cards, which have been sitting in Mom's attic for 35 years. And I had a little crypto clue on the bottom. Now, let's look at this clue. I used a Playfair cipher. The key was A Hacker Looks Past 50. Hey, that was the talk, right? So here we go again. Remember, A-H-A, but we already used A, C-K-E-R, looks, L, we haven't done that, O, but we already used O, so the next one is K. We've already got a K, so what's next? S. And then what comes next? P, and then what? T, and then F, I, F, T, Y, and then there goes the rest. So you can see how that populates. Some of you following right along. Pretty easy when you pick a key, bop, 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 fill out this little 5x5 grid. We're not using Q, or we're not using Z. All right, not using Z in this case, okay. Probably should have done it differently, but don't worry about it, it still works. And so I sent some messages. Go ahead and email me. Go to a website. Dial a phone number. At the time, the Navy had me working out in Hawaii. Tough assignment. Made 18 trips to Hawaii in 2 years from East Coast. The general said, you're going to be the director of the operations center. He's like, sir, I'm a reservist living on the East Coast. He goes, no, you're going to do it. Got that. So racked up a couple 100,000 frequent flyer miles, and I had a Hawaii phone number for a while. And then sometimes the easiest way is just to ask people nicely. We encrypted this stuff with a Playfair, but note how I wrote these messages. What's one of the things that comes out of a Playfair that you can't end up with as a letter pair? No matter what 2 letters I pick, it turns out that if I have 2 letters in a row that are the same, like FF or OO, I can't have OO mapped to OO because then that's sort of a weakness in the cipher, right? So they say you pad that. When you see double letters, you stick an X in there. So OO would become OX and then O the next thing, which is a little bit more complicated. Unless you mess it up or you're drinking. I couldn't do that back when I was on active duty. This is nice. I need another beer, too. So what we find then is that if you see double letters, and we encrypt this stuff, 2 letters together are what? You can't have double letters in a Playfair. And so the team that was working on it looked at it and they said, okay, you got an RR, an MM, II, KK, AA. Forget it, it's not a Playfair. But you can't have them as odd, even pairs, like number 1 and 2. But if it's the last one of one group and the first of another group, that's perfectly legit, right? And what they didn't bother to do is look at it to see whether it's odd, even, or even odd. And for hours and hours, they kept trying different solutions instead of Playfair because they got thrown off track only because they didn't bother to count from position 1. So real simple stuff like that will cause you to overlook the right answer. And it turns out if you put all the clues and you mapped them like this, remember how we were going top to bottom? The first clue was TAWSA, and you look at that. But when you put all 4 together, you get the magic words that say to GMARK or give me white beads. Remember you had all those things? It has a number at the end. And the team that did that was 4 grad students from DePaul University. I was only going to give like 1 ticket. I usually give out free plane tickets to Southwest. Can't anymore. Their new system doesn't work that way. I had so many free plane tickets. Now just to do a round-trip ticket to Florida and back, I have to do over $10,000 worth of retail flying to get 1 round-trip ticket, which is nuts. So it's another story. So they tried to solve somebody else's puzzle the next year, and the exec texted me, said, hey, can I get a hint? And I said, yeah, save your money for next year for this plane ticket. So I wound up buying 4 tickets. DEF CON 2008 puzzle never went solved at DEF CON until some guy I know, about a year and a half later, said, hey, G-Mark, send me the puzzle, and he figured it out. Because look, you've got things like 4 G's in a row, G, 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 and so guess what? It is absolutely not. It's not a Playfair. It's something else. Quite frankly, I've forgotten what it was. But I think I saved my notes. Nonetheless, guy figured it out. So I bought him a plane ticket. I said, come on to DEF CON. So it's pretty cool. So next year, a couple years ago, ShmooCon, anybody will go to ShmooCon in 09, you got all these badges of the moose, and it had this Morse code, or I called it moose code. And it turned out I screwed up one of the buttons, or one of the dots. I had a dot in it instead of a dot in it. But that was close enough. You would have probably figured it out anyway if you got all but one letter. And it had barcodes, because it was a barcode, schmarcode, and everybody wanted barcodes. Turns out, though, when you print a barcode at an angle, and you don't print it at a high resolution, it does like that. It wouldn't scan. Everybody's like, oh, that's a really cool app. They pay 99 cents, and they go to scan, and it doesn't work. It's like, sorry, you have to type. One really geeky guy looked at him, and he deciphered the barcode by hand. Because you can do that. If you got good eyes, you can figure that out. So it turns out the left border, the right border, and the barcode ended up being these things. Mistletoe, which is in garbage, and Moosel Defense, and Chocolate Mousse, and Musketeers, and all those other moose-oriented things. And then a barcode on the end. What do you recognize in the barcodes? Well, they're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, first digit. But what's in the middle? 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 1, 3, 2, 1. What are those? Fibonacci sequence. That's worth something. Here. You drink? Fort NSA shot glass. Go fill that up. Cool. So, we got Fibonacci sequence. Well, what's Fibonacci sequence? That's the way rabbits multiply. All righty. What else could the Fibonacci sequence be? Remember, you take 1, and then 1 is 2, and then you add up the numbers, 1 and 1 are 2, so 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, 3, 1, and things like that. So each number here adds up to the sequence before it. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 and 5 are 8, 5 and 8 are 13, 21, etc. So if you know about Fibonacci, you know about this. And so we take those numbers, and then we said, okay, fine, we've got all these different words, Mistletoe and Moosel Defense and Chocolate Mousse and Musketeers and things like that. And these are all little nonsense phrases that he came up with, and there's a bunch of garbage at the end. Someone said, hey, these are telomeres, like the end of a DNA that doesn't matter. And the problem is with your DNA, when the replication errors occur in a telomere, you don't care. But eventually, the replication errors work their way back like a fuse to the real stuff, and that's when you get cancer and die. Well, that's a theory anyway. So drink while you can. So if you notice here, there's also autographed on the right, what? G-Mark, right? Guess who else showed up unannounced? Honestly, I didn't plan on this. Right there. The Lord works in mysterious ways. So we took those values, took the Fibonacci sequence, and we said, hey, what if you shift them around? What if you the first one starts in column 1, then 2, then 3, then 5, then 8. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take these things and we're going to shift them that many characters. If we go ahead and take this stuff, and then we shift everything over a little bit, and then say, hey, there we go. We're going to wrap these things around. We're going to a whole new sequence where now these are going to line up differently. And the stuff that you see in the orange is the stuff that makes sense. The stuff that was in the green, actually, if you go back a little bit, it turned out to be Bruce and Heidi XO, and G-Mark is Bruce and Heidi run ShmooCon. But there's only one leftover thing in each column. Why would there be only one leftover thing in each column? Maybe that's the checksum that makes the column add up to something useful. And if you, in fact, turn these to numbers, and then add up the columns, and then modulo base 26, right? Because you wrap around 26, 27 goes back to 1 again. So now you mod 26, and these now get back here. We go, oh, 9, 24, 14, 1, 25, 0, 15, 14, 0, 15, and say, look those things up and say, what do we get? If 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C, and so on, as we might expect, guess what we get? With this whole sequence of numbers, it turns out that you get ixnay on usme. And the guys who figured out that first, they won the prize. And what kind of sick mind comes up with this? This was me sitting at Bruce's and Heidi's dining room table trying to come up with something for their badges because they had to get them out to the printer the next day. And when I asked Bruce, you got a piece of graph paper? He downloaded it off the internet and printed it. Honest, yeah, it's like, I'm old. Okay. I still have a pad of this stuff sticking around somewhere. So then DEF CON 18, I did 18 stages. Ugh. So the first clue was look for gold on the DEF CON CD, because everybody gets a great CD with all the talks on there. Well, what was on there? Something that looked like that. Does that look familiar at all? Any students of literature, perhaps? The periodic table. Drank. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? Well, what's the file name? Goldbug. All right. Who wrote the Goldbug? Edgar Allan Poe. That's pretty cool. And so it turns out that was one of the first crypto tales that were written. And it's pretty cool because the guy finds this thing, and he used the same code that Edgar Allan Poe used, by the way. And again, this is 1840s, but it works. And send a little message. And so you break that. Congratulations, you've just discovered a secret message. You might see that a lot. In the military, whenever you had an answer that was going to be on the final exam, what did the instructor do? He would pick the podium and make sure that you were awake and go, all right, remember that stuff. And it turned out that there was a visionary cipher, A-U-J-K, K-U, so there's a pair of Ks, but they're not the same, and it said, this number is a date at which, and so on. So we had special appearances. This is like a tour de force of different cultural icons. Edgar Allan Poe and Pink Floyd and James Dean and Ayn Rand and maybe other people were in there. I had a lot of fun. And there was a number of stages you had to go through, and then the final guy ended up calling me on the phone, on my cell phone, on a special Google Voice number that was only used for this contest, and he got it. It turned out that that was the same guy who cracked the other contest, and I said, you know, if you're female and beautiful, this would work out great, but you're a fat, middle-aged guy, and it's just not going anywhere. So last year, I was asked to do CarolinaCon 2010, which is also today up in Rhode Island, but you can see where I am right now. They canceled it? Because I couldn't make it. You know, anybody got beer around here? This is probably, no, it's got to be some beer. Buy the speaker a beer. Deviant! All right, there we go. No, I don't want the one you're drinking. Yeah, who wants it? It's a light beer. Anybody got real beer? This is baby beer. All right, Sam Adams, need an opener for it. I've already broke. This is hot. I don't mean to bitch and moan, but this is the man. All right, it's Deviant. To the rescue. Thank you, sir. All righty, so let's take a look at CarolinaCon. What does this stuff look like? Yeah, well, not quite semaphore. They're nautical flags, right? Semaphore is when you do the hand positions and things. You only have the same color flag. But hey, being in the Navy, I figured Rhode Island, Newport, they probably get along with it. They understand that. So it's a 9x9 grid. And if you read these flags, which I can because I learned them in the Navy many, many years ago, going along the major diagonal, Q-U-A-H-O-G-C-O-N. And then going around the corners, Q-U-A-H-O-G, you know, they had these little, it's a CarolinaCon 3 times. And on the right-hand side, you got all these different letters. C, A, Z, W, T, F, C, K, P, W. What is this? What is it? How many, you go like, all right, crypto puzzle. How do you start solving this thing? Probably the first thing you do is what? Buy a bottle of booze. All right. Then you convert the flags to letters. Next time, okay? Lazy hacker. Okay, so we got this, but you say, all right, what other clues have you got? Like, what's the size of the grid? 9 by 9. What else do you see that's 9 by 9? Sudoku! Who said that? All right. You drank? Do you want to drink like it's 1984? Here's your Fort Meade National Security Agency shot glass. Way to go. So, it's a Sudoku puzzle. And it turns out if you translate the letters into numbers, doesn't matter what number, and there's only 8 letters in Kohagkan. You know how tough it was to come up with a Sudoku that only had 8 of the 9 numbers, and one of them was completely missing, and you had to infer it? So you figure it out, and you solve the Sudoku puzzle. Then what do you think you do next? Well, you can convert it back to letters, exactly. And you sum them. So you add the upper left here to the upper left here. So A plus C, or Q plus C, QRST, and then the next one ends up being TOOBAD. We couldn't get sex on it this week. And that was a little close. That was in there. So, Shmukan, last year, you went there. Remember those badges? With all those numbers on it. What do those numbers look like? With 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 significant figures. Greg, star date. Captain's log, star date 55. I wet my pants, right? Come on. Those numbers are too small. What else could they be? GPS, yeah, latitude and longitude, okay? So it turns out that we had 6 badges, 1 from the program, 1 from the schedule. Okay, those numbers showed up. And oh, by the way, people missed these initially. They were hide in plain sight. I love hiding things in plain sight. These are right on the schedule for all the conferences. And it had lat, long, and direction and stuff like that. Plus some poetry that I put in the different program, things like that. They would say, okay, I want to fly like the distance. So it tells you all the things if you solve the puzzles. And so here's what happens. Those are all 3, 6, 9, 11 of them. Yep, they're still the same. And those are the 4 tuples that they used to have. And if you looked at them and you line them up, it turns out that if you look in lat and long and you go to Google Maps, every single one of those suckers lands on top of some weird airport. But it's an airport because that was the theme. Remember the program guide? It looked like a Southwest Airlines handout, but instead of a 737, it was a 1337. They did a pretty good job on it. And so we connect the dots, and we look up the airport codes, and we get those letters for the airport codes. Well, one of the things that you find that when you need to pad letters in most of the classical ciphers, you stick a Z in between words because you need to break, and you can't encrypt the space. And so a lot of times you'll see a Z and just throw those out. And so you take a look at these codes, if we connect them in the right order, and what do you think this says? SOYOUMUSTNEVERC, so you must never say Mickey Mouse. And I couldn't quite get it perfect because there just weren't some airports out there with the names that we needed. But we used real live airports. And again, the guy who solved this was the same guy who solved some of the other puzzles, unfortunately. So then we go to TourCon. And this is really cool. This is out in San Diego. Anyone been to TourCon? It's not bad. Yeah, they do a great job. This is TourCon 12. And Hikari said, hey, G-Mark, I'll let you do the keynote and design the badge and design the crypto puzzle. And it's pretty much, it was like a playground. I could do anything I wanted out there. Oh, almost anything I wanted out there. And so what I did is he came up with some really cool stuff. So there was a program and things like that. And this is the schedule. I took a picture of this. I kind of folded it open, took a look. The badges were actually supposed to have all kinds of electronics on it. And the guy who was going to do that, it didn't work out. But it's tough to tell from the back of the room, but if you open the program and look right along the spine, what can you see here? Oh, Morse code. You're starting to see some themes here. And then all around the outside edge of this, and there's some crypto in the middle. It turned out the stuff around the outside edge of it was a base or module 12 representation of ASCII characters. And I just kind of looked at that and I said, well, that's what it is, not my puzzle. And at the closing ceremonies, I just mentioned that, and they said, and it's an base 12, and the guy next to me was like, how'd you know that stuff? But it ended up being one of the sponsors who paid the money. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. This is the back of the T-shirt. You Fido Yifyeni Etziver Mit just well, what do you do with that? Well, it's encrypted. So what could it be encrypted with? Well, we could do Caesar ciphers, we could do Vigenère ciphers, we could do Playfair ciphers, and things like that. And all you have to do is find one pair in the right position that disqualifies a Playfair. But this got spaces in it. So remember Vigenère was multiple ciphers running simultaneously, and what's something you see in a lot of my cipher contests? G-M-A-R-K, and it turns out that if you encrypt it with the letters G mark, you get this. Oh, time stands still at speed of light, so use your skill to gain insight. A little poem on the back of all these T-shirts. And then you look in the back and it'll decode with the key of C. And I remember at the closing ceremony, somebody says, what the hell's a key of C? I says, look at the first two lines. What's the speed of light? C. You're like, drink. So what is the speed of light? It's not equals mc squared. What's the speed of light, please? 299,792,456 meters per second. So awesome. Who's that Uber geek back there? Come up here. Come here. Not just any coin. This is a National Security Agency coin. This is a really cool coin. And you know what the nice thing is about this really cool coin? Shake my hand. That's no. This is how you present a coin.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And if you ever lose it, I'll give you a phone number to call. They'll tell you where it is. All right? I'll buy it back for $1. There we go. He likes it. Hey, Mikey. Okay. So key of C, and it turns out on the back of the program was this big block of text, which happened to be the exact number of character length of the crypto sculpture at CIA. And it turned out that if you took key number, the letter number 2, then skipped 9, then 7, then 9, then 2, 5, 4, 7, 4, 5, 8, and you repeated that sequence, you got a little message. Congratulations, you found the hidden message. Again, there's that little phrase. And then one last channel for you to look down. What do you expect to see when you look down? No, you get your mind out of the gutter. You see your badge. And then that was the little next key. So each of these stages kind of build up to the next one. So now we're up to ShmooCon this year. We're getting to modern history. And so inside the program on page 12 with this little crypto contest. What else do you see in there that you recognize other than the word crypto contest across the top? Shmoo. Where the hell do you see Shmoo? How about Moose? First column. And so, if Moose is your key, what type of cipher could you probably do? The Caesar cipher, right? The first row is encrypted with M, which is you shift at 13. O is going to shift at 15. S and so on, and E. And it turns out that it's a simple Caesar cipher to get you started. So guess what? You take Moose, you add it, because you're going to subtract these things out of here, because remember, you add the key to get the cipher, you subtract the key to get the plain text. And W minus M is J, and H minus M. Remember, you got to sometimes add 26 so it doesn't wrap around and become negative. J-U-S-T, and all of a sudden you find out, just look down. It's low to high, first and last, go down then up to find the key. And now you look at the badges. We had 5 different badge types. It turned out that if you looked at them fairly carefully, and people found this like really quickly, like before I even showed up there, they already figured it out, that under the reason line, that was Morse code. Because they're like da-da-da, you know, a little random dash, but there's Morse code messages in there. And if you look at the Morse code messages, you get really weird things like 0 Mogadishu, 1 armadillo, 2 yesterday, 3 telegraph. What the hell was I drinking when I made that? Beer? Probably. But if you look carefully, what do you see? Look at the first, go down then up. Put them in order. May the moose be with you. Hey, that's their theme. And so then you look in the schedule and you see this. And does it look familiar? And you say, But of course, because we're all feds and we've been to the CIA, and this is the crypto sculpture, which looks like this in real life, but it looks like this in abstract. And note also that it doesn't really say the crypto stuff, which is encrypted with cryptos, but it's encrypted with what? Shmoocon, 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 and it just ciphers it around. So it's a visionaire table, but with the word shmoocon in there. But what's the problem with shmoocon and a visionaire? I got 2 O's, I got 3 O's in there, right? And so you can't do that, but I did it anyway. And one of the smart guys had hung them up for hours because he said, oh, we can't do that, so we got to subtract them all out. It's like, just play it the way it is, okay? So this is crypto sculpture. Yeah, but it's better than chocolate and peanut butter. Shmoo and Cryptos, I created what? Here's their key, the Cryptos key. You notice, and this is on the CIA, sculpture care, YPTOS, Cryptos, and it works its way around the diagonal. And this was posted by the guy who ended up doing, anybody remember who did the artwork on Cryptos? Sanborn, Jim Sanborn, yeah. And he's done a bunch of crypto stuff, so very similar, Shmoo and Cryptos. And so I created the CryptMoo, and I trademarked it because I figured someday I might need that. And there's a shmoocon, blah, blah, blah. And you can see kind of thing. But, oh, by the way, this is what the CryptMoo was. And again, if you look back at what was printed in the program, but look along the right-hand edge. What do you see? Last character. L-E-S-S. Less moose than ever, G-mark, MMXI. What's MMXI? 2011. Okay, for those who don't remember Caesar, you might remember the date system he had. And when he was out at the bar with his buddies, that's ordering 5 beers. All right, that bad jokes, but still is. Okay, so we come back here, we got the shmoocon, the CryptMoo, you go ahead and we took a look at it, and we got the less moose than ever, Gmart 2011, the program had letters stuck in the corners, and you had those letters, and you said, okay, fine, you put them all together, which, again, you have to be drinking a lot to pronounce this. I think it's Aborigine. And so you take the cipher, the key, may the moose be with you, the ciphertext, Rujukula Galapagos, and then let's get to work. And we go ahead and we just look at row with the M in it, and we find out that we take that RJWIU, and it turns out that if you look up, you'll find the letter that it enciphers to. So the first row, that R enciphers to the letter I. And the next row, the J enciphers to P, right? And then what's next? W goes to A, and then IP, A, D, D, R, E, and SS. Well, it could be RR or UU. Remember, I had that anomaly. It could have been that anything. But would it be IP address, IP addr, or IP addu? Okay, if that confuses you, you should not be coming to these conferences. So it's IP address, okay, and so on. And it ends up being solving this thing, because there we go, there's all the answers. IP address, shmoocon VII. Now what? Remember, I'm trying to get you to think a little bit with these things. We've got the 5-stage output. We've used every other piece of the puzzle except this thing here. And what is this? Everybody called this the hidden word puzzle. And I loved it because it was a hidden word puzzle that wasn't a hidden word puzzle. And you've got save, and you got hi, mom, and okay, there's Gmark again. Why the hell does this guy keep coming up? Sex, yeah, I figured, sexhibit, okay. Sexhibition, almost, it's sexhibition because I'm not Gnark, and I'm not going that. What else we got in there? PCP, not there, not here. Diagonals, maybe. God -1. Secret, yeah. There's all kinds of cool stuff with it. It means nothing whatsoever. And so people spend hours screwing around with this thing for no good reason, like you. Drink. But there's only one instance of each of the key letters in each row. Let's go back and look at it. IP address, shmoocon VII. How many I's in the first row? 1. And how many P's here, okay? None. So let's see, IP address. What am I doing? Drink. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. What did I do differently? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, it was ShmooCon 7. We had to find IP at ShmooCon 7. So it was IP address ShmooCon 7. Well, it turns out that if you SHMOOCONVII, there's your 11 characters. So I'm going, okay, fine, you've got numbers. So I'm looking for an IP address. So the first row is in column 0, and then column 3, then 4, then 4, and then 8. And I end up saying, okay, great, 0344-8155-389. What the hell is that? How could that be an IP address? You do know, of course, that IP addresses are broken up into 256, by chunks, or bit chunks, for what? Just for your personal convenience. It's a real live number. It's a big number. There's no dots out there in the internet. And it'll resolve to this, unless you have a Macintosh product, and then it does not resolve. And it turns out that if you're using Firefox with the leading 0, it won't work, but Internet Explorer would. Why do you think I had to come up with something that would work for them? Because I wanted them as a client someday to do that pretty well. And so it turns out if you drop leading 0, then HTTP, and try this, if you've never tried this before, back in the early days when they used to do all the web blocking and things like that, and you had to get around because you want to go to www.pornosite.com, and they wouldn't let you do that. So you would DNS lookup, okay, you want to go to 123.123.123.123. They go, oh, we're going to block that. So you convert that all into one big decimal, and you go, I'm going to go to http://32984638782. And you get right through. Because it was trying to read what you typed instead of actually resolve what you're doing. They fixed that subsequently. But a lot of people didn't know that. And the team that almost won this thing, that finally would have beat my buddy, who has won like 7 of my contests, got hung up on this. Because they did not understand that an IP address was a decimal number. It could be a decimal number. And I said, go ask 10 other people. I said, go ask, or whatever. I said, ask 10 other people. Okay, honest question. It's okay if you don't raise your hand. Who here knew this before right now, that this decimal number would work as an IP address? At least 20 or 30% of people do know that. So I said, if you ask 10 people, statistically, one of them, and probably 2 or 3, are going to know. And they never bothered to do it. When they lost the contest, I said, how many people did you ask? They said 2. I said, you failed. You failed your clues. You failed your directions. So good things come in threes. You add them together. So you got the moose be with you. You got IP address, ShmooCon VII. And you go ahead and you get this thing. When you go to that IP address, it gives you this. Again, you add the letters together like numbers, and you get gmark@shmoocon.us. And I bought shmoocon.us for, I think, $1.99 at GoDaddy. And I used it once, and then I don't care about it anymore. So if somebody wants shmoocon.us, goes to the highest bidder. $2. It's more than I paid for it. You can have it. I think I actually let it go. So you set these things up. So then we come to CarolinaCon 7. And no, this is not racist. No, this is not a Confederate flag. It might resemble the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia, if you are a good historical reference. But it also could look like a slightly miscolored nautical flag with letters inserted into it. The point is, this is this con's challenge. And it's on your badges, and it's on your programs. And I have a prize for the person who solves it first. So I've given you some ideas and some clues about tales from the crypto. I hope you've had a little bit of fun with this, because what you're going to find out is that no matter how sophisticated we get in cryptography going forward, there's some basic fundamental principles that apply to everything that we do there. And if you understand those simple moves, you can then look at stuff and discern what the most likely outcome is. You can think, you can use your brain, and you can be really, really smart. If you do that, someday soon, you too will be giving talks on tales from the crypto. Thank you very much.